I am Dr. Nalini Avinash Waghmare, working as an assistant professor at Waghmare Vidyapeeth. This is my brief information. Today's our topic is related to India's foreign policy. Actually, Indian foreign policy is very lengthy one. Here, only few. It will be explained in a very brief manner. India's foreign policy was conducted under the guidance of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of independent India. The shaping of India's foreign policy was largely influenced by the international development after the Second World War, the weakening of the forces of imperialism, and the growth of the forces of democracy and progress. Several countries in the post war era in Europe and Asia broke away from the capitalist system to form the socialist system. There was an upsurge in the movements for national liberation that resulted in the collapse of the colonial system of imperialism. Then, after independence, Nehru became the virtual director of India's foreign policy. Under his guidance, India became the first state to have pursued a policy that was a new in the history of international relations, the policy of non-alignment. After the Second World War, we know the why the non-alignment started in the world, and the Nehru was along with Nehru, the other supporter by the Nasir of Egypt, Sukarno of Indonesia, and Joseph Broz Tito of Yugoslavia. They all come together and they not take the side with the America and Russia. So they wanted to their own independence policy, which is safety their state and international peace also. Early in 1947, at the initiative of India, the Asian Relations Conference at Delhi was convened where the principles of foreign policy of independent India were proclaimed. It was attended by representing 29 countries. The conference helped to strengthen the solidarity of all Asian countries. Nehru also participated in Afro-Asian Conference held in 1955 in Bandung and popularized the policy of non-alignment there. The agenda contained in this conference was the economic and cultural cooperation, respect for human rights, and self-determination, and finally the promotion of world peace and conflict. That is the main intention behind to starting with this non-alignment. Then the policy of non-alignment means the acceptance of the inevitability of war, but on the conviction that war could also be avoided. Non-alignment stood for an independent policy conditioned and controlled by India's own strength. Because of adopting non-alignment policy in after the Second World War, it is safe the Indian states also. It means not to entangle oneself with any kind of alliances or commitments that would lead to war and conflict. Non-alignment implied a position to judge each issue without prejudice or bias, like a judge give a judgment. The same way here the non-alignment policy was adopted. It enhanced the chances of effective mediation in bitter conflicts and thereby brightened the prospect of world peace. In the Korean War and the tangle of Indochina, the role of peacemaker that India played was vital one. So, how the non-alignment implemented in the Korean War, Indochina War, how this played an important role. That is a major part after adopting this non-alignment. Then the secret of this policy is that India is neither permanently to West nor with the East. So she was clearly with communist bloc on the issues such as disarmament, racial discrimination, colonialism, and China's membership of the United Nations. But on major issues of aggression North Korea, India clearly criticized the communists. The pro-West move did not prevent India from opposing the US military adventurism in Korea. While we are studying the non-alignment, basically we think that non-alignment is related to not to side with the USA or USSR. Because after the Second World War, in the world, the two nations competition between each other, which is superior, became a superpower in the world. So that time this non-alignment movement started. Under that, the India taken the lead. Other nations also sided the time. So whenever the any bloc, maybe you take the America also taken the advantage Korea at that time. India also against the America. India was equally vigorously in condemning the Anglo-French action in Suez and Soviet intervention in Hungary also. It's not only against the US, but it also USSR when the USA taken the step against the Hungary. Non-alignment also did not mean isolated, but it's not a separate, it's not a neutral one because India had established diplomatic relations with almost all independent states. So she was a member of United Nations and also took part in the Commonwealth of Nations. When we study the foreign policy of India after independence, so these are the few points we have to keep remember in our mind. Uh, then the basis of all this was cooperation, but at the same time following an independent its own course. Then the policy of non-alignment was based on five principles of Panchashila, enumerating international conduct. These were first envisaged and formulated in 1954. These principles were mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, not to interfere in their uh, state affairs, non-aggression, not to attack other that state, then non-interference in each other's military affairs. If India, Pakistan, China, or Japan, if other nations are maybe there, but they not interfere in their military or in their internal matters. Equality and mutual benefit to these nations, then peaceful coexistence. All are peacefully, if any problem arises, all are sit, discuss cooperationally and come to the compromise or solve that problem. By April 1955, Burma, China, Laos, Nepal, Democratic Republic of Vietnam, Yugoslavia, and Cambodia had accepted the Panchashila, which were the mentioned things. The non-alignment was a tactic or technique to maintain world peace in such a way that each nation pursue his own interests without disturbing the others. Uh, they follow their own rules and regulations. The policy was also in tune with the domestic requirements of democracy and socialism. A major economic factor for the adoption of policy of non-alignment had been India's economic backwardness. Foreign aid was an important component for developing our underdeveloped economy. Therefore, aid was welcome from all quarters USSR, UK, USA, Germany, and Japan. This presupposed non-alignment. India was both tied with the East and West for economic development purpose. India was dependent on foreign countries. Means it's not totally neutral. It's not apart from the relation with other countries, but it's have its own policies, but not to interfere with other countries' political and national affairs. However, the events on the borders in September-October 1962 gave a serious challenge to the non-alignment movement. Due to the Chinese aggression on India, it was now recognized that non-alignment must be tied up with the immediate defense requirements in order to serve a useful purpose. Conceived as a struggle against colonialism and growing polarization of international relations resulting from military blocs and Cold War, non-aligned India has constantly struggled for all-round emancipation of the people of Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean and other parts of the world. So non-alignment has achieved success and has continued to play a decisive role in efforts to promote world peace. Some argue on the relevance of non-alignment movement after the end of the Cold War. However, the single existence of the United States and its dominating influence today threatens to make the world unipolar. Instead of territorial imperialist design, the ugly face of economic imperialism has taken its place. The widening gap between the developed and the developing countries is a source of instability in the world. Access to resources and debt burden today threaten the survival of smaller nations. So, the goal of non-alignment would now change according to the economic needs to face new challenges in terms of new forms of imperialism. So, later on, we know the situation, what happened, this non-alignment one. Then other principles of Indian foreign policy after independence is the one thing is non-aligned has been one of the basic features of Indian foreign policy. The non-alignment is the most important contribution of India to international community. In fact, India was the first country which initiated the policy of non-alignment, which was adopted by the most of the countries of Asia and Africa, which attained independence in the post-World War II. This policy implies complete detachment from the two military blocs which had appeared on the international scene after 1945, as well as faith in solving international disputes through peaceful methods. So, in brief, as India was keen to play a dominant role as a preserver of peace. So, this is the one first foreign policy which India adopted after independence in its policy non-alignment. Second, fight against the colonialism and imperialism. See, another basic principle of India's foreign policy has been its anti-colonial and anti-imperialist stand. The government of India has always championed the cause of the exploited nation against the colonial powers. Anti-colonialism and anti-imperialism has been a matter of faith with India's foreign makers. The anti-colonial and anti-imperial stand of India was partly due to the fact that she had suffered or victimized at the hands of British imperialism and did not want other countries of Asia and Africa to undergo similar suffering. We know that the India know that from 1600 to up to the independence 1947, how the British rule, how it made India as a colonial one, how it is destroys the Indica socio political, economic, and other things, and how the national leaders sacrificed their life for the independent purpose, and how the British looted the India in every point of view. So, after independence, India it's adopted one more policy in foreign policy is that wherever the colonialism or imperialism there, the India takes side of them and they fight against this colonialism and imperialism. Then third one is the opposition to racial discrimination. Another principle of India's foreign policy is that she is opposed to any racial discrimination. India firmly believes in equality for all human beings. When you study the Indian history, you will find that from ancient to modern period, all are equal in the eyes of law that policy adopted. So its policy is to aim at opposition to all forms of racial discrimination. In South Africa, in other countries, we find that the color, racial discrimination means the white color people and black color people. If white color people, they think that they are more superior than black color. So this racial supremacy is found in some other countries. That time India oppose it. For example, in South Africa was the worst example of racial discrimination against and exploitation of the colored people, including the people of Indian origin there. So India gave full support to the cause of victims of racial discrimination. Not only India had cut off diplomatic relation with South Africa in 1947, but also used her influence later in the application of comprehensive sanctions against the white minority racist regime of South Africa. India did not allow any facility to the racist regime, oppose the system both inside and outside the United Nations, and stood by the demand of racial inequality. Even Indian sportsmen and players of games like cricket fully boycotted racial discrimination, its symbol, South Africa. Because South Africa government discriminated the white and black discrimination in their country, so India took the side with South Africa and fight against them. It is only in early 1994 that apartheid was finally given up and a majority government was duly elected and installed under the leadership of Nelson Mandela. When you read the Nelson Mandela role against the apartheid, practice in South Africa. Then later in 1995, it was abolished. One, having achieved the goal of racial equality in South Africa, India re-established full relation with that country later on. India has constantly supported the establishment of an egalitarian human society in which discrimination based on color, race, class, etc. does not exist. India firmly believes that racism is one of the sources of conflict in the world and therefore it threat to the international peace and security. That's why it's adopted that against this racial discrimination in the world. It may be noted that India has opposed the policy of racial discrimination not only against the Indian subjects but also took up the cause of Negroes in the United States and non-white population in Rhodesia. In short, India has acted as the champion of racial equality and taken strong steps of United Nations the policy of racial discrimination. Then another policy is solve the problem with peacefully. Peaceful settlement of international disputes. Disputes among the nations are unavoidable. There can be only two methods of settling international disputes, war or peaceful settlement. So most of the time India adopted war has been most commonly used method of deciding disputes from the prehistoric days till now. War was considered the legitimate means of deciding dispute. It resulted in the victory of one nation over the other. By the end of First World War, restrictiveness of this method had reached harrowing heights. Since then, it has been increasingly realized by international community that peaceful settlement of disputes should be the goal of not only international organization but also of all states. So instead of directly attacking, small attacking, if any international crises are there, international disputes are there, they have to come, sit, discussion and cooperationally solve that problem. That was the method adopted by India. India has always held with faith in peaceful methods for the settlement of international disputes. India has believed that peace cannot be promoted by creating positions strength by military alliances, which only increase the possibility of war, but avoiding use of force. So it has favored peaceful methods like the direct negotiations, meditation, conciliation, arbitration, discussions, accommodation, and judicial decision, etc., for settlement or disputes. India played a positive role in the resolution of Korean and Indochina conflicts. India may be noted that India has been a strong supporter of the United Nations as well as has expressed full faith in its capacity to settle the disputes. It was precisely out of this faith that India took the issue of Kashmir to the United Nations. India upheld the stand on various issues on the basis of merit and has refused to blindly support one bloc or the other. The chief motivating force with India has been the cause of world peace. That's why India has always extended full support to the United Nations in the implementation of its decision for providing military and other personnel. But it's always wanted to peacefully settle the problem or solve the problem instead of war. Because if war took place, every nation suffer under it. People also suffered. We have the two example in front of us. The First World War, what was the result of that? Then Second World War, what was the result? How the every nation suffered under that one. So India is known by ancient to till today because of its peaceful policies and non-violence. Then Panchashila. Another feature of India's foreign policy is her belief in Panchashila. The word Panchas came from two Sanskrit words, Pancha meaning five and Shil meaning rule of conduct. The five ideals known as Panchashila as follows. Faith in one's people, nationalism, without which no nation can be basis of national identity. So faith in your one, you feel all are one nation, belong to one nation and keep nationalism in yourself. Then faith in humanity, which must be the basis of all international relations, considering the case of one's own people against the broad background of the universal brotherhood of man. So this is another humanity. All uh, those who are living on this world, all human beings are one without considering the caste, color, race, or boundaries and other states. Faith in freedom, which is the basis of democracy, freedom of mind, freedom of body, and freedom of spirit. Faith in social justice or equal opportunity for all citizens of a democratic society without any special privileges for anyone. So, faith in God. As a people of Indonesia, whether Muslims or Christians or Hindus or Buddhists, all believe in the existence of an ultimate reality behind them, means their faith in God, faith in social justice, faith in humanity, faith in nationalism, then faith in freedom also. So later on, the Panchashila of Nehru was the first embodied in treaty signed by India and China on the issue of Tibet, 29th May 1954. The five principles mentioned therein are mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and no aggression, they not attack each others, and non-interference in one another domestic affairs. That is also one more point. Mutual benefit and equality to every uh, nation, those who sign this one. Peaceful coexistence means these are the five principles with adopted or agreed by the India and China. Respect for each other's territories, no attacking, not interfere in one another's domestic state affairs, mutual benefit for each and others if trade, commerce, everything, cultural exchange also, but peacefully coexisting instead of war and other things. But faith in these principles were expressed on the vacation of Bandung conference held in 1955. In addition to of these principles, certain principles also were also enumerated. These include respect for fundamental rights, right to defend singly as well as collectively, joining of the pacts without any external pressure, participation in secret pacts for the sake of the benefit, settlement of disputes peacefully, and respect for justice. India continued to adhere to these principles despite a rude shock conducted to her by China by launching an aggression against her in 1962. The term Panchashila soon became popular, but Nehru called it an international coin. The term Panchashila is found in ancient Buddhist literature and refers to five principles of good conduct of the individuals. These are truth, nonviolence, celibacy, refrain from drinking, and not to steal. Then, after China attack on India, this Panchashila was principle was broken by the China, but later on India taken steps and later on continued its policies. Then another foreign policy of India is a bias in favor of Asia. Sixthly, that though India believes in the policy of cooperation, friendship, and coexistence with all the countries of the world, she has a special bias towards the countries of Asia and Africa. Ever since the attainment of independence, India has tried to develop close relations with the African and Asian countries and has shown keen interest in their economic development. With a view to forge the sort of unity amongst the states of Asia and Africa, India took initiative in organizing two conferences at Delhi in 1947 and 1949. Pandit Nehru justified his special interest in the countries of Asia in the course of his address to Asian Relations Conference held in March 1947. Then finally, we come to that in foreign affairs, India pursued the policy of dynamic neutrality, peaceful coexistence, principles of Panchashila, and world peace. It also opposed imperialism, colonialism in every part of the world. It refused to ally itself with any rival group formed by USA and USSR after the Second World War. India maintained cordial relations with every European country except Portugal, which became dissatisfied with India because of capturing their territories of Goa, Daman, Diu, etc. by India after independence. Then India kept good relations with France as France gracefully handed over its possession in India to the Indian government. Then close relations with Commonwealth. That is also one more point. India has always sought of develop close relations with the Commonwealth of Nations. Even though India decided to become a sovereign democratic republic, the Indian leaders decided to continue their initiative connection with the Commonwealth. India's decision to adopt republican system and still continue as a member of Commonwealth lead to the creation of new Commonwealth, which was multiracial and multicultural one. So India decided to join Commonwealth because of the numerous economic benefits which she could expect from its membership. Explaining the reasons which promoted India to become member of the Commonwealth, Pandit Nehru said, "We have chosen to stay in the Commonwealth because we did not want to live in isolation and because it confers on us benefits which do not take away our sovereign status. Again, there is no law behind the Commonwealth. So India has not even the formality which normally accompanies treaties. It is an agreement by free will to determine by free will. In the subsequent years, India continued to take keen interest in the activities of the Commonwealth and develop mutual cooperation with the member countries. Then another, what we say, foreign policy of India is the support to the United Nations. India is one of the founder member of United Nations and many of its specialized agencies. It has full faith in the international organizations and agencies. India firmly believes in international peace and security. India does not support the nuclear weapons, wants their elimination and considerable reduction of conventional weapons and armed forces. India believes that this goal can be achieved by strengthening the United Nations. India is an important member of group of non-alignment aligned in the United Nations. She is also a prominent Afro-Asian member of the world body. India has sponsored and supported several progressive measures in the United Nations and its agencies. India's Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Pandit was elected President of the General Assembly in 1953. India has been a non-permanent member of the Security Council for a number of terms. Her contribution in the cause of world peace has been universally recognized. Then India has continuously supported the efforts for the universalization of United Nations. There were several areas in which India has played a significant role in the United Nations. For example, India has played a consistently positive and energetic role in arms control and disarmament. In the field of human rights, the issue which attracted India's attention quite early were racial discrimination and colonialism, as already discussed, I think. India's contribution has also been significant in the areas of health, food, children's welfare, and improvement of the condition of the working people and women. After reading this foreign policy of India, or after this discussion, few people also criticize the, or few scholars, historians, people also criticize the foreign policy of India. The foreign policy has met with severe criticism at the hands of the critics. Some of points critics are as follows. Firstly, it is said that foreign policy of India is unrealistic and lays too much emphasis on idealism. And secondly, the policy of non-alignment adopted by India has also been made the target of criticism. It is argued that in a world divided into two hostile camps, India stands aloof and cannot depend on outside help in case of need. As a result, this policy India has looked upon with suspension by both the great powers, that is America and Russia, and they were reluctant of offer her assistance. On the other hand, Pakistan, by closely aligning herself, received enormous amounts by way of assistance from the United States and other Western countries. However, this criticism is not quite valid because in the later years, India received assistance from both the superpowers. Thirdly, the decision of India to maintain close connection with the Commonwealth has also been subjected to criticism. The critics argued that membership of Commonwealth has not only curtailed the sovereignty of the country, but also impinged on the right of India to pursue an independent foreign policy. However, this criticism is ill-famed. Commonwealth is a voluntary association and India chosen to become its member because she expected certain benefits from this membership. As Commonwealth is a voluntary association, India assumes its membership by choice. She retains the freedom to leave the Commonwealth anytime she desires. So, membership of Commonwealth does not in any way infringe on the sovereignty of India, and she can leave it anytime she deems necessary. She continues to be its member only because it provides her certain benefits. Fourthly, the foreign policy of India has completely ignored the importance of power in international politics as laid emphasis on settlement of international disputes through peaceful methods like negotiations. It is argued by the critics that these methods can be effective only if they are backed by power. In the absence of power, no country would be willing to trust the other and leave its fate in the hands of the negotiator or mediator. The supporters of India's foreign policy are not willing to agree with their critics and hold that the doctrine of power is not applicable in the present context when the world is divided into two camps headed by US and USSR. Then finally, it is argued that Indian foreign policy has failed to secure the international interest. The Kashmir issue still continues to hang in the United Nations without any solution in sight. But probably the most important achievement of India's foreign policy has been the valuable contribution toward the promotion of world peace. India has not only popularized the peaceful methods for the settlement of disputes, but also played an active role in the reduction of tension by assuming for responsibilities in Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, etc. While in Korea, India took up enormous responsibility as chairman of the neutral nations. Then lastly, we come to the conclusion or evaluation. In the beginning, USSR was suspicious towards the policy of neutrality of India, but gradually it came nearer to India, helped in industrial growth of India, and tried for the good relation between India and USA too remained suspicious towards the policy of neutrality of India, did not like its policy towards China and Korea, and felt annoyed because India refused to ally itself with its military pacts like SEATO, Baghdad Pact. Yet it promised all help to India when China attacked India in 1960. But the relations of India with USA could not become good. India remained the member of the British Commonwealth after independence, but opposed Britain on the issue of Suez Canal and its advice to join the military group of USA. Later on, Britain tried to come closer to India, help it bringing peace with Pakistan, and promised all help to India in its war against India kept good relations with every country of Asia and Africa except the white government in South Africa, which is now no more. India, though it tried to help China in getting India a seat in UN, compromised with it on the issue of Tibet and tried to be friendly with it, yet failed to have cordial relations with it because of its refusal to accept the then boundary line of their territories and was forced to fight a war against it in 1960. The closeness of China with Pakistan and USA too had put up hindrance in maintaining cordial relation between two. So India has failed to keep good relation with Pakistan because of historical background and Kashmir dispute. About three wars against it, 1947, 1965, and in 1971. India has always supported UNA in its efforts of maintaining world peace. India's success in its first 20 years of independence may be the matter of dispute, but there is no doubt that it has raised its voice boldly in favor of democracy, justice, equality of nations, and world peace. So these are the books I have referred for preparing for detailed information India's relation with India's foreign policy or non-alignment, peaceful coexistence, or what we say India's in the neighbor states policy. So you can refer these books. Bandyopadhyay, The Making of India's Foreign Policy. Mukunchan Dubey, India's Foreign Policy in Evaluating Global Order. Then Nehru, A Political Biography. Sri Gupta, Kashmir, A Study in the India-Pakistan Relations. Then mainly other books are also Foreign Policy India, P.P. Rathod book. Tej Prakash book, India's Foreign Policy in a Changing World Politics, How It Changed 1947 to up to now. Then Dube's book, Mukund Dube, again repeated here, India's Foreign Policy. Kish Kumar Singh, Indian Foreign Policy. India's Foreign Policy states that how India relation with Pakistan, China, Bangladesh, Japan, and other, uh, Nepal also. So these are the book for detailed study. You can refer these books. So thank you very much for listening my lecture. Thank you.